Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Thoughtful Talent Show. I'm Jen Werner with Jen Werner Coaching.
And I'm Chad Ahern with Talent Teams Consulting.
Today, we're really excited. We're going to be talking about the Clifton Strengths Talent theme of Relator. So with us are two coaches that we've invited. So we want to jump right in. Let's talk with Michael first. I met Michael as he is a fellow Eat to Grow certified coach. So Michael and I met actually through our certification process with Eat to Grow. Michael, do you want to tell us some about you and your passions?
Yes, Jen, thank you. Lovely to see you again, and thanks for inviting me on. So, my passions, well, living, I suppose one of my big passions is really helping people to live their best life. I feel that sometimes we get into automatic robot mode and just get on with things and so on, but just taking a step back and going, where is it that we want to focus on? And I feel as a coach, I'm very privileged to be in that environment with people and trusted to go on that journey with them. So that's a big passion of mine. Um, Personally, then also, living by the beach now and my dog Fergus, and yeah, so just yeah, that'll do for now.
Awesome. Thank you.
Wonderful. And I get the privilege of introducing Damian. Damian's actually been on the show before, but for those of you who have not seen our other episode with him, I'm going to mention that Damian is an ICF certified, Gallup certified strengths coach, a fellow Eat to Grow coach, as Jen mentioned, and recently picked up the cool new title of a TED Fellows coach. So we're thrilled to have him here. Damian has shared before that he focuses on providing strengths-based workshops and doing executive coaching. You also have a longstanding history in the career coaching environment. But I'm wondering if there's anything else, like Michael, if there's anything else you want to either add to that bio or maybe mention a side passion of yours before we get into the topic of the day.
All right, well, thanks. So like Michael, I would say what drives or motivates me is that same thing, wanting to help people. And took me a little while to figure that out, but probably about 20 years ago, I figured out that's what really I wanted to do. And then it took me a while to figure out how to do that. So I've been doing coaching now probably for about 15 years and
Awesome.
Love it. Absolutely love it.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for making the time to come join us today.
So with that, we wanted to really jump right into our topic of discussion today, Relator. So this is my number 8 theme. Chad, what is it for you?
Mine's 13. So I'm definitely going to be learning a lot and probably not contributing quite as much to this conversation. I really want to hear from Michael and Damian, who really live out this theme in their top 5.
Absolutely. So Chad and I are going to take a step back in this episode. We're going to be the hosts and provide some questions to our wonderful guests today. But let's start, Chad, with, can you give us the short description from Gallup about the Clifton Strengths of theme of Relator?
Sure. So Gallup describes the Relator theme as follows. People exceptionally talented in the Relator theme enjoy close relationships with others. They find deep satisfaction in working hard with friends to achieve a goal.
Awesome. So I want to start off with both of you being able to share with us and our audience really how this theme shows up for you personally. I want to start with you telling me, we're going to start with Damian, because Damian, I think this is your number 1 talent. Is that true? All right, great. So I want to start with Damian, and please just share with our audience how this shows up for you personally and maybe how it plays out in your life.
You bet. So it is my number 1 theme, and it's one that, in hindsight, I see has come out throughout my life, and one that since going through Gallup training, I've really focused on strengthening or developing from a raw to a more mature talent theme. And for me, it's that it's a great example of how our themes are the things that we we naturally do without thinking about it. And I think it's really helped me in my coaching practice. And even before I got into coaching, I was doing career services work, and before that, I was an executive recruiter. And it really came out there because I found I could partner with my clients and I could partner with the candidates and develop relationships. They weren't necessarily long-term relationships, but we went deep fast and very easily for me. And so that's how it shows up for me, being able to go deep and fast with a few people to accomplish a goal.
Great. Those are great insights. Michael, do you want to share with us where this falls for you and then how it shows up for you personally?
Yeah, no problem at all. So it's number 4 for me. And I would say, just like Damien, I think it's the ability to have conversations with people, and a desire and a need and want to have conversations with people that mean more than just superficial chit chat.
Yeah.
So if I was to kind of relate to how it relates to me, I would probably say, if you think about it in terms of conversations that I would even have with clients, I'll ask them to talk to me on that level of, maybe something that they've never expressed or told somebody in this safe space that you really want to get out in the open. And that's as a way of building trust. I think trust is so important for me as a relator. And, this theme of, when you're in my circle, you're in my circle, and I will defend you to the very last once you're in my circle. And I think getting into that circle can be sometimes difficult for people as well.
Sure, sure. Oh, that's awesome. I love hearing these insights from both of you. So let's talk a little bit about how these themes, maybe when raw, Damian, you expressed some of that, like changing it from a raw talent to a mature talent. Maybe some of the maybe more raw, or potentially maybe even overused versions of the talent, how this might have had some negative impacts on your life.
Yeah. So one that comes to mind is I similar to Michael described, I like to ask questions. I like to really get them to know somebody, and not at a deeper level, not a superficial level. And in its raw state, I'm paying more attention to my need than their need. And so I've been given feedback before by a trusted colleague that I go too deep, too fast for some people. So I'll share things from my personal life that, what she said was, you can make people uncomfortable by sharing too much too fast. And that never occurred to me, because we see the world through the lens of our own strengths.
Right.
Absolutely.
And so that was a real eye opener for me, to like tap the brakes a little bit and gauge what their reaction is as I'm sharing about myself. And that sharing is really with the intent of getting them to trust me and to open up to me. And it never occurred to me that it could be off-putting to people.
So, do you have anything to add? How this shows up for you?
Yeah, I'm nodding. I'm nodding while I'm agreeing with Damien, and then I'm also thinking of another story, which so I'll share the other story first of all, and say, when it shows up in its raw format for me, I can be quite needy of relationships, and the need to try and, it's a very rare thing that a relationship for me as a relator would fall by the wayside, or it would, something would happen that the friendship or relationship would be impacted in a way negatively. But when it does happen, I try to fix that. And that's the raw mode of where I'm actually focusing more on the need to connect, as opposed to whether it's best to leave it as it was and try and fix it. So I think that can sometimes really be a blind spot that I need to watch out for in my raw. And then, just to coincide with what Damien is saying, I work really closely with a coach supervisor who always says to me, "Is the spotlight on you, Michael, or on your client?" And I love that terminology, because it really reminds me, why am I asking this question? Is it for them or is it for me? And also, why am I telling them what I'm telling them? Is that just because I want to, or is it serving the session? And I really like to kind of, remind myself, am I dialing up Relator or am I dialing it down?
That's awesome.
Yeah, Michael, that's a really interesting perspective to have in terms of the work that we all do as coaches. I'm curious, does that same sort of spotlight idea flow over into your friendships? Is this friendship for me versus the friendship is beneficial for both of us? Is that same sort of dynamic at play?
Great question. I would say until I start working with strengths and understanding the world through the lens of strengths, I would say, yes, it would have impacted in a raw way, definitely. But as, I have friendships that are 30, 40 years old at this stage, are coming up to 40 years old. And they're reciprocated and they need to be reciprocated for me.
Okay.
If I was young, when I was younger, I would have had a desire to be friends with many. That's definitely Relator in overdrive for me.
Yeah.
But I've slowed that down, and on assessment, especially through COVID, when circles got smaller because of COVID or because we were less seeing people, I felt that I nurtured and fostered the relationships that really, really mattered. But I don't give extra time to a particular person for the sake of it being extra time for that person. Each person in my life means something to me, and it needs to be reciprocated in order for the relationship to grow. That makes sense.
I'm loving that word of reciprocation come up a couple times. I'm hearing that a lot. Was there anything else you wanted to add to your answer, Michael?
No, I'm okay for now.
Because one of the things that you did bring up that I found fascinating in our pre-show that we talked about yesterday was this sort of, I think you called it grief dodging. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I'm hoping that word, that phrase might trigger you a little bit on that aspect of the sort of raw side of, or maybe a negative side of Relator. I thought it was just a really unique thing. And if you don't want to go there, don't feel to, but I found it absolutely fascinating. I think it might be beneficial for some of our audience.
You did actually tell me you would remind me of this again today. So I'm happy to go there in the spirit of sharing with the audience. When I talk about grief dodging, I talk about it coming from a place that I haven't experienced close loss, while I have some friends who have. And because I feel that I don't have the experience of that, some of my friends will jokingly call me a grief dodger because I will do everything else I can to support them, but I can't be with them for long periods of time because I almost feel like there's a falseness or an inauthenticity to the conversation because I don't know how they feel and I don't know where they're coming from. And it's interesting because they will say, but just be there. So you mentioned it about it in a raw state. I'm very aware of it, and I do a lot of things to support them, but maybe not be present. And I'm working on that, but it's also because it's my stuff. And I, in the spirit of having a nurturing relationship, will work on that because I want relationships to, they've gone through it, and I, touch wood, I will go through it, but not yet.
Yeah.
And they will be there for me from that lens, and they will have experience too. So yeah, thank you for reminding me because you're reminding me that I continue to do work in that space. And also it's not just Relator that's in play there as well. It's me protecting myself with my harmony and empathy as well, and making sure that I have boundaries in place that I'm not triggered too much that I won't be able to bounce back from. So I hope that helps.
No, it's wonderful. And I kind of wanted to put the same sort of question to, or expanding on the idea back to Damian. Are there situations like you where you have a tough time maintaining that relator engagement with people because you haven't had a similar experience, or you can't relate to the experience that your connection is going through? Just want to bring your perspective, and I know we each live out our towns differently, so it might show up differently. But I thought the differences or similarities might be helpful to those that are listening.
I would say that where that idea shows up for me is in coaching sessions more so than in personal relationships, where somebody is experiencing something that I have not, and so I struggle with asking a meaningful question. You know, sometimes coaching questions I think can sound trite, and I'm high in communication, so I focus a lot naturally on the right word at the right time, and so I think with that same emphasis or similar emphasis on relationships, I think that can be a challenge for me, trying to find the right word if I can't relate to the situation that the other person's facing.
Got it. Thank you very much for the. Yeah.
While Michael was talking, it reminded me of something that we talked about in the pre-show, and I believe you actually, Damian, talked about this as it's a wonderful thing, but it also can have a like a negative side to it, a little like sharper edge maybe. Want to talk to us a little bit about the loyalty of like the mama bear?
You bet. So, and afterwards I was thinking, am I the mama bear or the papa bear? But I think we think of the mama protecting the cub, right?
Right.
Never challenge if you're on a hike.
Yeah.
And so for me, with work teams that I've had in the past, I've always had the good fortune, and I think as a result of my relator being so high, of developing close and loyal relationships with those that work with me, and that expands even to me having a sense of protecting those people. And I'm a pretty easygoing guy. A lot of people only see that side of me. And what I realized in my last job at a university was I'm really easygoing until you start messing with my people. And that's the phrase I'll use. Like, I can handle a lot of stuff, but when you mess with my people, like, all gloves are off. You can mess with me, I can handle myself. But if you're messing with my people that aren't in a position to stand up to you because of power differentials, like, that doesn't work for me. And we're going to talk about it. And so that's an interesting side of Relator that I've realized.
I loved it because you were talking about that mama bear in the pre-show, and I was like, oh, I could just see it, like, don't you mess with my cubs, like, these are my babies. Thank you. It
comes very much back around to what Michael was sharing about the whole loyalty aspect. I think that's an interesting piece. Jen posed the sort of darker side of the question. I'm going to have the privilege of bringing us back around to sort of the more positive side of this theme, and sort of how it has positively benefited you in your lives or in your work. And I'm going to pose this to Damian first, just to be sort of, my harmony is happy when I could give equal time and equal presence to people first. So Damian, I'm going to put it right back on you. How did, beyond the mama bear and being maybe protective, is there a more positive side of that? And are there other aspects that you'd like to highlight in terms of how this would positively benefit your life?
One positive, and I'm fascinated by all talents, and I'm curious about them all, and I see other people do things that come easily, and that's helped me notice things that come easy to me that don't come easy to others. And one of them is being able to go deeper with strangers in a way that I think benefits both, and I've gotten recognition about that from others. So for an example, many of us have had experiences with the airlines that don't go our way. And the poor people that work behind the counter, are dealing with irate customers all day long. So my approach when trying to remedy a situation is to start positive and try to establish a relationship. And even though positivity isn't high for me, I'm able to turn it on in that moment. And empathy is high for me. And so I kind of leave this combination of empathy and relator. I can address the person and begin by saying, how's your day going? I know you've got a super stressful job. I don't want to add to that stress today. I'm hoping you can give me some advice. Nice. And
beautiful.
What I've found is it engenders a willingness in them to help me, because I didn't come there to attack them. Yeah. I came alongside of them, if you will.
Yeah. That, you sort of downplayed your ability to go deep fast or share too much right off the bat, but I think that's a beautiful example of how you can kind of flip that around or tweak that approach a little bit and really have some really positive experiences with people you're just meeting for the first time. You mentioned another story yesterday that I thought was really telling about the community playground. And getting, because I think one of the things you brought up, which I found very fascinating in our pre-show, was that end phrase of the brief description about working hard with friends to achieve a goal. And you mentioned that when we were talking about just sort of how it shows up generally for you. Do you care to elaborate on the community playground story and kind of how that plays out? Because I thought that was a beautiful demonstration that others who are starting to learn about this might resonate with.
Yeah, no, thanks for that reminder. So, in the Gallup definition, it talks about working hard with a small group of friends. And for me, the word friend, the emphasis isn't on the word friend or, different definitions of friend. So it doesn't need to be a close friend. It can be a friendly relationship. And so when my kids were in grade school many years ago, I was active in the PTA, and a topic came up one time about more playground equipment for this elementary school. And I did a little research and found for the amount of our budget, which was $20,000, we could either buy one piece of commercial equipment, or we could, if we could muster the resources, we could do a community built playground. But we needed about 200 people, and we needed donations of materials and raise money and all these things. And so I mentioned these options at a meeting. And somebody said, we can't even get 2 volunteers to come weed the flower beds. How are we going to get 150, 200 people to come build a playground? And connectedness is also very high for me, number 4. And I just thought of what an impact this will be and a legacy this would be for the children, for the families, the experience of the community. And I made an impassioned plea, give me 1 month to come back to you with a plan. And I started talking to people, and everybody I talked to was so excited about it, because I used that word legacy, which is a word that we all know, but it's not used in casual conversation. It's typically more of a lofty kind of a thing.
Right.
And everybody that I talked to said, we can do it. Absolutely. And we did it. We had over 200 people. We had lots of donations. We all worked hard for a weekend. I mean, it was literally dawn till dusk for 3 days. And when we were done, we had this amazing playground. And I got so much feedback from people saying, this was an amazing experience that I'll never forget. And epilogue that I didn't mention in the pre-show was 2 years later, we moved just about 5 miles away, but our kids were at a different elementary school. And so when we went to that elementary school for the first time, or maybe it was a PTA meeting, the head of PTA said, I know who you are. That playground. Can we do that again? Can you do that again over here? And we did.
Oh, that's awesome. Relator times 2.
Brilliant.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing those very telling and very demonstrative examples of how Relator can come out and really bring people together. Michael, you shared some things in our pre-show, and I'd love for you to get your take on this question about how does your Relator show up in a helpful, beneficial way, whether it's in your life or in your work, or both. And sort of maybe expand on or maybe even differentiate from Damian's comments.
Yeah, well, look, I think for me, there's a real, I find it really easy to talk to people with Relator. And I know sometimes we look at the team and we go, oh, Relator, sometimes their attitude is that they work really well with the people that they know. But I think how it shows up for me is there's a trust that's already there, and I kind of foster and nurture that trust with people that I meet. My mom would often say to me, Michael, you wear your heart or your, on your sleeve.
Yeah.
And I think that's a way of me kind of telling people, you can trust me because I am sharing with you whatever that tends to be. And I don't mean necessarily oversharing, but meaning I'm telling you things that could be a risk to other people to hear, but I'm willing to go there with you because I want to foster that relationship or make that connection. So I think Relator helps me to build those relationships quickly, but it also allows other people in most cases, because remember what Damien said, sometimes you can overshare and it may make the other person uncomfortable. But I think there's we tend to naturally veer towards people that we know will be open to that. And I often think, is that because Relator is at play, or is that just because the universe is at play? I don't know
Ah,
sometimes.
okay. What I found interesting about what you just shared is, Jen and I have had plenty of conversations about how our deliberatives talents can make us a bit risk adverse about new relationships or new experiences. And I think one of the things you wonderfully highlighted there is how Relator can almost take the positive approach of people are overall pretty decent, and you're just now looking to deepen that, if I was hearing you correctly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
agree, Chad. And I also think, though, to go back on what Damien was saying with the lady in the or the gent in the airline, it's you know we have an informality with the way that we talk that naturally I think puts people at ease, and it's not manipulative. It's genuine. I often say, I see you, I hear you as a person. You probably see in the movie an avatar, there's a character
Uh,
that says, I see you.
yeah,
And it's a real way of saying, I see all of you. And I'm not here to add to that, as Damien was saying. I'm here to tell you I understand that, but how can we make both of our days better?
it's so funny you mentioned the avatar, because as you were talking about, that's exactly the uh, media reference I was going to mention. So I'm glad you went right there yourself. So fantastic.
In the pre-show, you talked a little bit, and it's similar to Damien's talking about the blending of his relator with his empathy. And you brought up an example and an idea about your relator and your individualization working together. And I will say, as someone who like didn't know you before, we were thrown into a thing together. I would say I absolutely felt that from you, that like ability to see me and go deep. I would love to hear you talk about that blend of your individualization and relator.
Yeah. I think all of our strengths are, our superpowers, but not on their own. I think they're
Right.
heightened when they're working with another or maybe three.
Yes.
But for me, individualization for me with Relator is the added value, I tend to call it, of not only seeing the person, but remembering the person details of what they tell you.
Mm.
So
Nice.
it's the deepening. It helps to go deeper even quicker. So if I put this into perspective or into a scenario, I will with Relator, it's about getting to know you quickly and strengthening and deepen that relationships. With individualization, you're always thinking about how could I really, really see this person? How would they like to, what do I need to remember about this person that's really going to add value to our relationship, i.e. Relator? So if you may tell me as a relator, or me as a relator, you may say something to me and I go, I'm going to park that. That will go in there somewhere in the brain. And then leaning into individualization, say a birthday came up and Jen happened to mention to me that she had a book that she read 10 years ago and she never was able to get her hands on a copy. I would be in the background looking for a copy of that book to not only strengthen our relationship, but to show how much I genuinely cared about our
Mm,
relationship. But individualization is really at play there because it's not just a gift, it's a gift that
Yes.
means something to you.
yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So great.
Wow. I'm just taking a second to process all this because, as I said, my relator is 13, so I've got a lot to learn from both of you. I'm also thinking, just given that we're all in the coaching environment, Jen and I were comparing some notes after our pre-show and realized that we really hadn't coached many people with Relator ourselves. But I'm wondering if there's anything else you'd want to add in terms of seeing other people's relators come out, whether it's coaching clients or maybe you have a significant other that has Relator. Are there any really positive examples of this talent theme coming out that are maybe significantly different than what we've talked about? Because we've already covered a lot of ground. I just didn't know if there was something else that we needed to add or might be beneficial for our listeners to understand around this theme that would come through this perspective of a person you've coached. Damian?
Yeah, so I'm coaching a finance executive right now, and Relator is quite high for him, and he's aware of that, and he realizes that it's been easy and effective for him to develop relationships with his team in different jobs over the years. But the reason I want to bring up this example was we talk about investing in our talents to make them into strengths. And in discussion, he and I talked about his relationship with his peers in this organization, other members of the C-suite, that was sometimes competitive, but he didn't think of them the same way he thought of his team. And so I asked him a question, given that Relator is so high for you, is there a different way you could relate to your peers than you have?
Oh, okay.
And it gave him pause. And finally he said, I don't know where you're going with this. I said, well, when you think of, we've talked about when you have a goal to look how you can apply your talents and strengths to that goal. And one of your goals is to have a better relationship with your peers. Your Relator talent is sitting right there in the top drawer of your toolbox, but you haven't thought of it at that level. You've thought of it down the org chart.
Mm.
And that was powerful for him and led to some behavior changes that have been quite effective for him.
Nice. Yeah, that's an interesting dynamic to think about. Social circles where the power dynamics going, as you said, downward versus lateral or with peers. That's a really interesting perspective. Michael, was there anything you wanted to add before we move on?
I suppose I suppose, Damien, you brought up this point in the pre-show, which I found fascinating as well. It's the Relator piece around unintentionally excluding people from a group. You might elaborate on that again for us, just for the audience, because I really like that.
Yeah. So in this case, I'm the subject of the story. So going back to your point, that we're always working on ourselves too.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And when I was leading a large team in my job at the university, I made it a practice of meeting with everybody individually, for not just the people or my direct reports. So I would spend an hour with people, and And there was one person on my team that I felt like we never really clicked. And I didn't really understand why. I had tried a little bit, but nothing seemed to resonate. As you talked about, it's easy to form a relationship when there's a give and take or when it's reciprocated. And so I said to her, I feel like we're not as close as we could be. And I'm wondering if you have an explanation for that, because not that we do battle, but we just, we don't have strong rapport. And she said, well, that's because you have your favorites and I'm not one of them. And this woman was very direct, probably high in command.
I was just
Level.
wondering.
And she said, you have your favorites. And I've always thought about treating people the same. I've been conscious of that. And so I thought about that. And she said, and I said, well, give me an example of how, what have you experienced that makes you say that? And she said, well, when you wander around the office, chatting with people, you never stop by my cubicle, or you do, and it's for just a second. And she was absolutely right. And it wasn't because I didn't like her or she wasn't a favorite. It was because it was not easy for us to have conversations. We never really clicked. And my questions would fall flat, like, how was your weekend? Fine. And then she'd look back at her computer. Or what did you do this weekend? Not much. Look down.
And for somebody that wants to build a relationship, that's a little hard when the conversation gets cut off.
Yeah. So anyway, that was her reality. So that was the reality. And I had to own that and think about, okay, what can I do about that?
Yeah. Thanks, Damian, for sharing that and reminding us of it, because I think that's what we need to be mindful of as if Relator is high in our ranking, because we tend to, if we don't get it back straight away or in that initial interaction, sometimes we don't try again, or we forget to say, well, what's the best way forward for this relationship? And I think, like what it's asking the question, what is it you need from me so that I can help lean into my Relator to serve you in that way? So I love, because you going there every day is going to asking her how her day was, is going to just, and being met with that all the time, it's not going to serve you, she doesn't want you there anyway. She wants to get on with her work.
Great.
Yeah,
So
great.
great. I love these examples. Chad, did you have any? I was thinking back to, some of my coaching clients, and they've really fallen into the same levels that I see here in Damian and Michael, and that they've expressed to us. Have you seen anything different in anyone you have coached?
Yeah, I really have not. I mean, this has been a lot of very similar to the threads for the few people that I happen to see, have talked to about Relator. I think one point, and this may be going backwards in our conversation a little bit, but I feel like this is a key point to bring it up, because we did talk a little bit about this in the pre-show, which is for those of us that are starting to understand, for people that are listening to this or starting to explore their talents, and if they read the long description, there can be, not always, this impression that Relator is really about these sort of inner circles or these inner cliques. And Michael, you were really enlightening to me yesterday when we were talking about this in the pre-show about, you've held on to relationships for, I think you even said 20, 30 years, and the circles are actually fairly wide. And that really kind of surprised me. I mean, it was great and enlightening, and definitely, broke some of the preconceived notions I had about this theme. But I'm kind of curious about how you see that dynamic of the inner circle versus broad ranging, wide variety of relationships. Damian, I've heard you say it's a little bit more about what can we get done together. I even think you had the example of people, a close group of friends working at a vacation house or something yesterday. I don't know if it was a lake house. I know there are plenty of lakes up there, but then Michael, you were talking a lot about very wide circles. I was just wondering if both of you could talk about that sort of impression of the click versus a wide ranging network.
Yeah, for me, it's that I have a wide demographic of relationships. So I have friends that are 20 and I have friends that are 80. And that's from my travels around the world and the teams that I've worked with. And leaving employment and going to another job and another career or different industry before I went self-employed back, 6, 7 years ago now. I've still maintained those friendships and relationships along the way because they were reciprocated. So it isn't that there's one circle and then that's it. It's that
Yeah.
each circle gets the same amount of, I'm not going to say time, but gets the same amount of nurturing at different times. I'm very conscious of the fact that, and I think this could be harmony at play as well, Chad. I'm very conscious of other people and not wanting a group of people to feel you spend too much time with them and not enough time with us. So I think Relator plays in with harmony there around me being very aware that the interactions that we have are well spent, that we're present for those interactions, because some people I may only see once or twice a year. And we go deep and we have value and we really appreciate those conversations. And that's what I think about the wide circle. That's so I don't, but I would say if you're not in, it's very hard to get in
Okay.
at that stage. Yeah.
Okay. Damian, any variation on that for you in terms of wide ranging, or you mentioned sometimes that you tend to let professional connections go once you've moved on versus what Michael was just talking about. Any perspectives on that?
I don't have an explanation for that.
Okay.
I haven't really thought about that. I mean, it's on the one hand, it's something that, I wish I didn't do, but on the other hand, it's something that, I've continually done. So I'm not sure where that comes from. I think it's sort of maybe investing in those that are around me right now so I think it's wonderful that you've maintained those over the years. I wish I have, but I haven't.
Okay. Not trying to put anybody on the spot here.
No,
What's
no.
that, Jen?
It's
so
interesting.
interesting to see the differences, and I think that's what's so wonderful about doing this. Chad and I have similar strengths, some same strengths, and it's great to see just even the little tiny differences in our strengths. And then when we start to get more people involved in this, it's why we opened it up to the other coaches, because you all have different talents high than we have. And listening to how those talents play out and how they look surrounded by some of your other talents that are supporting it, it's just wonderful to see the blend. And if we're just looking at the two of us, we see it one way because that's our lens, right? So
Right.
It's just wonderful to hear the differences. And even having Relator at 8, I feel a little bit like Michael about having the, like, if you're in, you're in, and if you're out, yeah, you're probably not getting in. And Chad and I talked a little bit about that. Like, maybe that's a little bit of the deliberative. I'm not sure you're safe. I'm sorry, you're going to just be on the outskirts for now. So, I just think it's wonderful to see the differences in the talents as they play out in us.
Yeah.
Are we over the additional coaching ideas here, Chad?
Yeah.
Do you have anything else?
No, I'd like to move along and see if they have
Right.
some images maybe that we can.
Absolutely. So we like to, add some, like, maybe some pop culture or even some just imagery around the talents when we move into this. And in some of our past shows, we've had some great ideas and examples. So some of us are really visual, and so it's good to have, like, this image in mind when we think about a talent. Michael, we absolutely loved your image and would like you to share with us first
Why?
your image when you think about Relator.
So my image of Relator looks at the big set of angel wings, and there's a couple of reasons. If you think of angel wings and they're protecting you, they're covering you. There's an intimacy to that relationship as well, but it's not just superficial, it's spiritual. It's on so many levels, just the way an angel, I suppose, how I would see out an angel, but very not just small angel wings, the big angel wings, as in, and then that almost encapsulates the circle. You're in here,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and we're both here. So that's the image for me.
Awesome. Damian, you had some examples that we really liked too. So of how you feel like it looks to you as a
Yeah.
leader.
So the example I mentioned yesterday, and I thought of a new one as it percolated overnight.
Ah,
The example I shared yesterday was if you've ever seen a picture of people putting sandbags in place or passing out cases of water after a natural disaster, where it's a human chain and they're all working together with the same goal. But the image that came to me overnight was that of a barn raising, where a community comes together with this sole goal and they work really hard. And there's such joy that emerges, not only for the recipient of the barn, but for everybody working together, and somebody's cooking and somebody's doing this and blah, blah, blah. And so that's really, and that's what I've experienced, sort of the playground and the friend with the lake
yeah.
house, and is this group of people that then disperses, but can come back together and take on another goal.
That's
Yeah, you
yeah.
got deep in that shared emotional or physical experience. You were able to get deep with these people and do something meaningful. And I love the in both of these two images together brought me to the one I had always thought of when we talk about circles. And so I'm gonna just bring it up. The movie Meet the Fockers with Robert De Niro, where he talks about his inner circle and like whether you're in or you're out. Yeah, it's just one of those. That's how I've always thought about it. So it works perfectly, I think, with the two of yours too.
Yeah.
Love it.
I
All right.
just as being sort of, I just want to kind of just being on sort of not the outside of the conversation, but being the sort of bystander. I find it so interesting that the three different examples, Jen's image seems to encapsulate what a lot of people might initially think about Relator, that in or out, the circle of trust. Then we've got Michael with a very sort of spiritual, very long lasting, we've talked about angels, sort of the eternal lasting of relationships. And then Damian, you came right back around with almost the practical, that coming back to there being a shared goal and working together, and the relationships are built around a cause. I think it's just a beautiful demonstration through those three images of the variation in this theme. I just wanted to highlight that because that was something that really stuck out to me as we think about each of those images.
That's awesome, Chad.
So,
thank you.
Go, Jen.
Yeah. So in this next section, we want to really think about the role the Relator theme can play in our contributions to teams. So whether that's from a team leader standpoint or someone on the team, we want your ideas or opinions about the ways that perhaps this theme can get in a leader's way, or maybe even potentially like derail a team, because we know it happens. So we're looking for ideas and maybe some action steps around, like, hey, watch out for this this may be an issue for you, or if you see this happening on your team, maybe what are some things we can do. So do you have any ideas or thoughts for our listeners around the negative potential impacts on a team for someone with Relator? Damian, want to start with you?
Sure. Oops, sorry about that. I plugged my computer in and the camera went off. There we go. Okay. So the risk, I think, for a team is, I think back to that story of the individual that thought she wasn't a favorite, and so I think that's a real risk when a leader is high in Relator, that it may inadvertently give off a message that others aren't part of this team, and so I think a solution, not the solution. A solution is to just be cognizant of that and work hard, if you're leading a team, to look for ways to include those that maybe aren't, that you don't have deep relationships with. The other thing that I would say, if you don't have a relator, or even if you do as a leader, look for others with relator on your team. I mentioned yesterday that Gallup has chosen colors for each of the domains, and the relationship building domain, of which relator is a part of, that color is blue. And so another coach friend of mine had the phrase that I picked up on: blue is the glue that holds the team together. And so as a leader, if you're not high in relator, or even if you are, look for others on your team that are high in relator and recruit them to be part of that glue that holds the team together.
Yeah, that's great. I was thinking back to exactly what you said about that feeling like you're on the outs or you're not a favorite. I was in a team that had a high relator as the manager, and we saw that the people who were in, you could tell who was in and who was out. Now, when the leader wasn't there, wasn't present, we really all worked together just fine. We meshed just fine. But when that team leader would step in, it's like they would suck the energy of those people right to them, and we could feel like, those who were out really felt on the outs. And it's just interesting how emotional that relationship really can feel, even for those who don't have high relator. You can sense it, like when you're out. So I think those ideas for action are fantastic ones. Michael, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, I was percolating on this last night as we finished our conversation, and because my background is HR, I wanted to throw a lens on it around how the need to have intimate or deep relationships with your team, if you have high relator, can actually sometimes get in the way of policy, procedure, legal, what's right. Oversharing may not be something that can be stood by when you then say, oh, well, I'm trying to form relationships with my team. Yeah, but you can't say that, or you can't do this. So be very mindful of that if you have got relator, because it can get in the way. It's that element of us, I think for relators, we actually feel that it's worth the risk to get to know somebody. We're willing to go there, but it may not necessarily be the right thing to do for the business.
That's a great point. Yeah, great.
Michael, you brought up something yesterday that I thought was really insightful, and it actually had more to do with an individual team member, sort of not necessarily a leader, but an individual contributor who had high loyalty, and about that loyalty to the team can get in the way of bigger initiatives. And I was just wondering, I think you talked about sort of a silo mentality. I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that a little bit, or share the full thought on that, because I just made some quick notes, and that's what I'm bringing back up.
Yeah, look, I mean, I worked and I've seen it before on numerous occasions where the silo mentality, as in the team with this relator in it, worked really well. They would be what we refer to as a high performing team, but not in the sense of collaboration, because they found it difficult it was like the relator competed with other teams as opposed to supported those conversations. So it's like, it's where the circle was small and tight, but they weren't seeing the perspective of, if we widened this circle and embraced all of the teams, how the business would benefit from that.
Got it. Wonderful.
Thank you.
Definitely,
Thank you for reminding me.
Yeah, definitely a hiccup if you got people running around with Relator just thinking about their own little pocket of people. So
I think
And
it's a safety zone. It's a safety zone for people.
Yeah.
It's okay. It's comfortable. And yeah, we need to stretch our perspective and our strengths, you know, so that we see other perspectives.
Yeah, and it's true. We have so many issues right now in companies and businesses where, you know, the teams really are siloed, and we see that cross collaboration is really what makes the whole company successful and everyone successful when we can broaden that circle, as you say, and think of it. Maybe we're not just our little team, but how can we make the whole company feel like our team? That's great.
So I again seemingly have the privilege of bringing us back around to the positive side. So we've talked about some fantastic attributes and capacities of people with these talents. As you start to think about sort of best contribution, I know we've already touched on the blue is the glue, but are there other comments or other observations you have about some of the benefits that this people with these talents can bring to a team, whether they're in a leadership role or maybe even an individual contributor role? You know, some of the listeners might not be in leadership positions, but they're thinking, I've got Relator, how do I best bring this to my team, or how can I think about it anew? What are your thoughts on that? And I'll start with Michael this time.
I was just going to say Damian, because that's what,
well, if you want to hand it off, I'm not going to stop you.
No, it's absolutely fine. What I would add is, I think people that have Relator are naturally curious. And I think if anyone out there is a Relator listening, and I say, ask more questions, be more curious, get to know people. Don't lean back, but lean into your Relator, because people are craving connection now. And I think it's a really powerful strength to be bringing into a team in that way. Team, TEAM, not THEME. Okay. I'm conscious of my Irish dialect.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, I think that's great. I'm curious, but oddly, you know, your comment about the spotlight really has given me pause, because I'm curious, but my curiosity oftentimes doesn't go very deep, and I think that that's an area where I could strengthen my Relator. But anyway, so back to your question, Chad, about you know, what can be done in a team setting. I think it's particularly in the times that we're living in now, where there's still a lot of people working virtually and not feeling connected. If you have Relator, lean into it and reach out to people outside of Zoom, you know, quick check-ins, text message, whatever, and recruit others on your team that have influencing themes, whether it's Relator or not, to because if you know that this is something that comes naturally to them, it not only will be helpful to others, but it will actually give them energy and bring them joy. And so look around your team and see who has Relator or other relationship building themes, and recruit them to participate in this nurturing of the group. That's my advice.
I love that you guys yesterday, and I'm sorry, I don't remember who said it in the pre-show, but I heard the term, you can be the cheerleader for the team. And I don't remember which of you said it, but I saw head nods, you know, from everybody across the board, that this is something that the Relator, you know, as a team leader, you can really be the cheerleader for your team and really be there to support them, even without. And that was the part that I thought was key, was even without having a strong connection to each team member, you're able to do that. Does anybody want to elaborate on that?
Well, I don't know if I'm the one who said it or not, but it sounds like something I might have said. And you know, I think of experiences I've had leading teams where I was able to put that into play, particularly with people that don't necessarily have a voice yet in the team. Because, like, I remember a receptionist in this department of 27, and that was kind of the lowest level coming onto the team. But it was in conversations with that person, we did click. And so I was a cheerleader for her because I saw things that she could bring to the team. And when I say cheerleader for her, I mean, I sang her praises publicly because other people didn't have awareness of the talents that this person had. And it was awesome to see her light up as a result of that and see other people get excited about what this person could offer to the group aside from greeting people as they came into our office. So it was just this sort of win-win-win thing. And I experienced that over and over again with people that where I could kind of be their cheerleader.
That's fantastic. I love all I'm sitting here taking in so much. I wish I could write this fast, but that's why we're taping this so I can go back. Thank you so much for sharing. Just as we start to think about sort of wrapping up this theme, we've spent just under an hour here talking about this and sharing a lot. I'm wondering if we were to summarize maybe one or two big points that you think you'd either really like to re-emphasize, or maybe something that, it sounds like both of you have been doing a lot of reflecting even as we've been conversing, and maybe there's a main point you'd love to put out there. But if we were to put out maybe a small segment or point people to some real key points around this theme, what would they be for each of you? So I'm going to start with Damian. If you have maybe one or two big points that you'd like to really hit on as we conclude this episode, I'd love to hear your thoughts. And Michael, I'll come to you next.
Cool.
So for me, I think it's actually a broader thought, but since Relator is my number one, it pertains to this probably as much as any, which is this notion of leaning into our strengths and developing our talents into strengths. And even those that come so naturally to us, there's always opportunity to improve. And so that image of the spotlight will stick with me, Michael. Thank you for that. And then the other thing, we talked yesterday in the pre-show about this notion of going deep versus wide. And that what stands out for me personally is relying on other people who have strengths that I don't have, and being aware of that. And so if you don't have Relator, that's okay. You can either fake it, or you can sidle up to somebody that does,
yeah,
and let them do some of the heavy lifting. And that's great. And I've had that experience where I've been the one with the Relator, again, at the airport, somebody's having a problem that's in my travel party, professional and personal. They'll say, well, why don't you go up to the counter and talk to them, and I'll be with you. And it's like, sure, because it's easy for me to do. So, so my point is, let's rely on each other.
Yeah.
Love it.
Excellent. Michael, your parting thoughts, or one or two key takeaways that you think we should emphasize for others?
I suppose in the broader context of not just Relator, lean into each other, like what Damian is saying. And if you don't have it, I wouldn't concur with fake it, but what I would say is utilize other people who are energized in that space, so that we all lift. It's like that we all grow together in that way. Yeah. For me, as a wrap up, I suppose, comment, because everyone's going to listen to the entire podcast, so we want people to take away not just one short sentence, okay?
No.
But we do want them to realize that Relator, like any of the themes, it has its good and bad points, and we need to be aware of our blind spots, because especially with Relator, we do not want to have relationships that are not being nurtured because we've taken our eye off the ball. So be mindful of checking in, like what Damian said, and leaning into each other and supporting each other as a community. And, let's all get better together.
Wonderful. There's that word again,
That's-
together.
Mhm.
But spoken like a true relator, I
Right.
must say.
Right, right. Well, I thought it's very interesting. Both your answers were very relationship. I want to get to you, David, but I just want to finish this quick thought. You went broad with your answers, which I think is beautiful because it shows that you want to relate to people with any and all talents. So that's one of the things I took away from just your broader statements. Damien, you wanted to add something. I didn't mean to
Yeah,
cut you off. I just wanted to finish my thought first before I forgot it.
No, that's great. I just wanted to elaborate on what I meant by fake it. And so, for me, woo is not high.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's exhausting.
Yep.
And I can do it in short bursts. So I can pretend to be a woo for a little while. And then I have to crawl back into my cave or my hotel room and, re-energize. And then my relator comes alive and I go pursue relationships with those few people that I met in my woo mode.
Yeah.
I love that.
Nice.
Love that.
Nice.
And Damien, I think what you said yesterday as well is having someone else who's a woo do all the heavy lifting, and
Right.
then and that's where we're supporting each other because they're completely energized in woo mode, and then you're developing the relationship with relator mode.
Yeah.
Yep.
Awesome.
Good stuff.
I that's a great place to stop. So I'm just gonna again thank both of you for joining Jen and I. Michael, I'm so thrilled to meet you through Jen, and Damian, it's great to have you back again. For those of you that have listened to this whole thing, hopefully, as Michael said, you've made it to this point. I just encourage you to subscribe and follow the rest of our podcast. We're going to keep having wonderful coaches back like this. We're going to be including Damian and Michael's contact information in our show notes. So if you want to reach out to them, if you happen to be listening from Dublin and want a coach a little closer to home, Michael's your man. And if you're in the Michigan area where Damian works out of, feel free to get in touch with him. But for now, I'm going to sign off. I'm Chad Ahern from Talent Teams Consulting.
And I'm Jen Werner from Jen Werner Coaching.
And we're going to say thank you again to Damian and Michael for joining us. And we wish everybody a wonderful day.
Thanks,
Thank you.
guys.